Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you the top 10 arc mobility tames. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. In at number 10 we've got the Deinonychus, and if you didn't know already, this is definitely one of those very mobile land tames. You can do quite a lot with it, and it does not take full damage as well. Obviously it is highly attributed for its boss defeating skills, as it can deal bleed damage to bosses, as you'll see in just a second. But what also makes it such a formidable boss creature is its insane mobility. Also the fact that it can just grapple onto creatures and absolutely tear into shreds with the bleed ability does help massively. Again, these creatures, if I haven't said it already, don't take full damage, which really adds a lot of fluidity into the movement of these creatures, as yes, obviously you can mitigate full damage by just dismounting last second before you hit the ground, but you can just, it feels a lot nicer, is what I should say, to move around with the creature where you don't have to do that at every steep cliff or drop. And obviously flyers will help you get away from that, but when you're using some just land creatures, it helps when they don't take full damage, and the Deinonychus doesn't. Also in a pack, they do have the pack buff as well, not really relevant to mobility, but it is more relevant to their boss fighting skills. They can also climb up any kind of wall or vertical surface, which really does make them very mobile tames, as no cliff or anything like that will stop and get in their way. It will only get in their way if it's over 90 degrees, and no creature apart from a flyer is really going to be going up that. A rock drake can though, and that creature is later on in the list. Continuing on, we have got the Ther. This pretty much has all the same attributes as the Deinonychus. I just think the way it climbs is slightly nicer. Instead of jumping from rock to rock, it simply just runs up it, and obviously you can run up any kind of wall vertical surface, the exact same that the Deinonychus would be able to. I just think the solution is a lot more elegant and nicer to use. They also can jump across insane distances. Sadly they do take full damage, but it's not the biggest issue in the world, and with their slightly nicer climbing, I do sort of prefer these things in the mobility aspect, although they cannot be attributed for their boss fighting skills, because although they can deal the bleed ability, they lack any kind of pack buff, and just let alone they're not even allowed into boss fights because of their climbing ability. Yet the Deinonychus is, I'm not sure what kind of climbing it can do in boss arenas, if any, because I'm not sure how that has been allowed through, whereas this creature hasn't. I'm not actually too sure, because I've never thought of climbing in a boss fight with the Deinonychus, but it was really OP when you could do it with a Ther. Obviously that's why you can't use Thers in boss scenarios anymore, because of their just absolutely insane mobility. So obviously they would have to make the list. They really do pack a lot when it comes to mobility. Obviously that just climbing skill really does make these things very versatile, and it's the best skill in mobility that a creature can have if it's a land one. Obviously you're going to get loads more mobility by being able to fly. It kind of sort of adds a full third dimension, but now you've got a little bit of a third dimension to deal with when you're on the Ther, because you can scale up walls. It's not just a very two-dimensional, oh, if there's a big thing where you simply just, you can't get to it, you just have to simply go around it. With a creature like this, you can scale up things, and it really aids in the mobility aspect. Now, the Manag armor is very, very strong when it comes to mobility, and I'm sure you all know this if you have played a little bit of Arc in your time. These creatures are zippingly and zoomingly fast, if there are even words that you can find in the English dictionary. Otherwise, it's something else with a similar synonym, you could say. That's a little bit of a hard thing to say. Either way, you can definitely tell when looking at these things, and also just when using one, that they really do pack a punch when it comes to mobility. I'm pretty sure they can't scale any kind of wall or vertical surface, but they can simply jump and dash over or around it. It really is no issue whatsoever, and it is still just as accessible as with a Deinonychus or a Ther. These creatures also generally are pretty speedy just walking on land as well, and their stamina drain is not the highest in the game, so it actually is a pretty low one, which helps in mobility, as you can go for longer, which, you know, it's less annoying to travel around if you don't have to constantly wait for stamina breaks. Also, coming away from mobility briefly, just to talk about this creature on a more general scale, these things were really, before they got nerfed, great PvP griefers. They're still kind of used today, as they can freeze creatures, and it really is an OP ability. You'll still see it used around a lot of times. They have been nerfed since release, obviously, so they're not quite as OP as they used to be, but still up there, and mobility still stays exactly the same as OP as it was. In at number 7, we've got the Griffin, and I'm putting this creature here actually along with some other similar creatures like the Snow Owl and the Desmodus. I think they fit into a very similar bracket. It's just I put the Griffin here as, in terms of just general speed and mobility, it seems to be the one that really gets the job done in the best way. Obviously, this has had a lot of movement speed boosted on it. They don't actually travel quite at this speed through defaults. That would make sense though. Like, come on, this thing is very, very fast in this clip. But either way, I find out of the three, they are the best in terms of mobility. In terms of other things, I would go for Desmodus and Snow Owl, because they can do some other things apart from just be a travel mount, whereas this is still the best in that kind of genre. Are we just going to say genre of creatures now? Is that a thing that you can say? Yeah, obviously you can tell they're really fast, and although yes, wyverns are faster through just normal flying, this was the first creature to introduce that dive bombing ability, which we all know and love, and it really does pack a punch, not only in dealing a lot of damage if you dive bomb down to a creature, but also you can gather a lot of speed with this creature, and it makes it incredible for doing any kind of traveling around, and also raiding wyvern trenches, things like that, especially considering if you're getting one on Ragnarok, you can also get them on Valguera. Valguera is where you'll find most of them, but you can get them pretty readily on Ragnarok, and the wyvern trenches are also on this map. You know, that's quite easy for you to just be like, well, I'm just going to go raid the wyvern trench with the Griffin. Yes, you can do it with something like a Pteranodon or an Argy if you're feeling particularly up to it, but a Griffin will do the best job all of the time. Yes, you can also get a wyvern to do it, but the Griffin just has the most speed out of any creature on the map. It is the go-to. So I mentioned the Rock Drake earlier, and now we've got it on the list. I've put it in at the number 6 spot if you didn't know already. This creature is one which first obviously came out on Aberration, and actually I should say Aberration. I know a lot of you got annoyed. I said it wrong. I'm correcting myself. Aberration. I don't know why I've been calling it Aberration the whole time. Either way, came out on Aberration, and this creature really is insane when it comes to mobility. It really does work on the map because of all the walls and cliffs that you'll find. It can dash onto them, and it can scale them at any angle. It doesn't matter if it's over 90 degrees, which obviously the Thyla and Deinonychus are limited in. It does not matter on the gradient for this creature though. You can just get so much more done in terms of a map like Aberration, but also in general terms you will find places up mountains and cliffs, especially in ASA with the wacky terrain all over the place, that is over 90 degrees. And I know Aberration hasn't come out yet on Ark Survival Ascended, but you can still get a Rock Drake in the game and use it, and I find they are actually really nice beating across the island because of the wacky terrain going constantly over 90 degrees. They actually still can get at it without just falling off like the Thyla and the Dinewood, and they really work well for all of that. Also, generally they are pretty quick and snappy. As a glider as well, you really can get a lot done. They're like the Mwing, but not quite as OP as that. That is also another creature which is later on in the list, but they really do deserve to be here in my opinion. You can get a lot done in terms of mobility with the Rock Drake, and generally all round they are really great strong creatures for combat. You can absolutely cheese Rockbro if you have some Lazarus Chowder with it on Aberration, of course, not the Gen 2 one, so they really do deserve to be here. In at number 5 we have got the Blood Stalker, and this creature really does need to be here for me because it is my favourite underwater travel mount of all time. Nothing really beats it. Also, just as a general all-rounder, its travelling capabilities and mobility capabilities are absolutely insane, and it definitely does deserve a place on this list for that. It really is unmatched in all of that, especially also considering it can travel on the top of the water as well, not just in it. You can also steal the aggros of the creatures, helps in a very low mobility environment, and it's so speedy like super speedy creature. As far as I'm concerned, I've put no extra movement speed on this Bloodstalker, so this is the speed that you can get out of them, and considering no movement speed has been put on it, obviously you can't usually because movement speed was taken off. I'm not sure if you can really level up movement speed on a Bloodstalker. Is it blocked or is it not? I haven't really paid much thought because I always have classic flyers on, so I never really know. But considering, I probably would think that it would still have movement speed so it can walk faster. It's not really going to make its other abilities go faster because it's just going to shoot webs and go to said webs at its regular speed. Either way, you can definitely see how a lot of traveling can get done with a creature like this. Yes, it is a little bit difficult in those early stages to get everything around and done, but same as the gas bags, actually I'm going to give it a brief honorable mention because that really is a nice travel mount, and it's one which has some ability, but it's not really the easiest to control at the start, and sometimes it can feel a little bit clunky, so I haven't put it here, but it definitely is one which can be considered quite mobile by many. But, you know, I think all the creatures on the list are better. But either way, Bloodstalker definitely deserves to be here. So, the Shadow Mane. I'm sure you all know this, and you've known it ever since it came out on Genesis Part 2, at least if you've been playing Ark for that long. These creatures are one which are just packed full of abilities and packed full of mobility. Generally, they are really speedy tames, and they can jump to incredible heights. Yes, they can't climb and scale any walls, and they still take full damage, but I find that this mobility is absolutely insane to get for a creature at this size. You can really gain so much height and scale over such long distances with these creatures. It is absolutely absurd how much mobility you can get out of this creature. And I know maybe you could say the Bloodstalker is more mobile and get to more places, but considering what type of creature this thing is and what other things it can do, it really does deserve to be high on the list. Also, it's very mobile in the water as well, like the Bloodstalker. The Bloodstalker is my favourite underwater creature, but the Shadow Mane definitely does have it there. They also have natural armor, they have the hydration buff, which the Bloodstalker doesn't have. They also have the pack buff. On top of that, they can go invisible too, and they are a go-to for boss fighting creatures. They really are very versatile, but also very mobile. In at number 3, we have got the Rhino, and I've found that this is really a good one when it comes to mobility. There is a lot that can be said about this creature when it obviously comes to this factor. Not only is it a very fast and agile tame, it also never needs to wait for any kind of weight or stamina. Its stamina drain is very low, and it also just has quite a lot of it anyway, and its weight is very high. You can even pick up creatures like Rexus and Paraceratheriums. You're never going to have any trouble whatsoever with the mobility of this creature. On top of that as well, they also can be very useful for just general PvP use, as you can raid bases super easy with these things, and I've heard they are great for that. And just for PvE, they're just pretty decent for traveling around the map. You can really just expand in terms of what creatures you use to travel with the Rhinogonathers. Obviously you've got Argies, you've got Tapajaras, you've got Pteranodons. Sometimes you might want to run a Rock Drake over, or a Bloodstalker, or a Shadow Mane, or a Thyla. But this sort of adds a new dimension. It's a really fast, quick flyer that's also really capable, because you find with the faster flyers in the game, usually they tend to be a bit weaker than the bigger, bulkier ones, which tend to pack a bit more of a punch, whereas the Rhinogonather really packs a lot of punch and also is very fast and is just a generally good flyer and a very good mobile flyer. Its taming method is also quite mobile as well, although not really relevant because you're going to have to be doing a lot of moving during the tame method. It's pretty much just the same as the Reaper tame method. If you don't know what the tame method for the Rhinogonather is, also I do have a video down below. This was also for the joke, by the way, of this segment of the video. I felt like it. I was like, yeah, mobile tame method, that's really going to make a big difference, isn't it? Did you enjoy that? Did you not enjoy that? Do you want to see those? Do you want to see more jokes and videos? Comment that down below, because, you know, I want to know from you. Are you enjoying a Joker video? Should I do a Joker video? Hide it in there. See if you can find it out. Obviously this one was quite obvious. I've dragged it out a bit now. Either way, let's probably just continue on with the list. In at number 2, we've got the Astrodelus, and also I'm going to put the Chopper Ignatius here just as a little honourable mention, as they are quite similar, although I do prefer the Astrodelus, especially on Gen 2 as Element is so abundant. Obviously they spawn on the map as well, they do spawn on Fielder as well, but Element is a little bit harder to find, and they're just so mobile and so useful. And also, people don't really mention it, but you can practice on one of these even before you tame one and you get the saddle in the missions to get your Astrodelus just skills up before you even get one. Because if you've never used an Astrodelus before and you have access to Gen 2, then go do those Astrodelus missions over and over and over again until you get good at those missions and get good at flying this thing. And then by the time you tame one, you're already going to be an expert and you're going to be using this thing to the fullest. That's what I did anyway, and I find that is just quite a useful tip if you've never Astrodelus before. Alternatively as well, you can just spawn one in with a command and then put the saddle on it with a command as well, and then ride around on it and practice that way, but it feels a little bit cheesy to do that for me. So obviously I do the missions, head over to Gen 2, do those missions. Obviously you can probably tell by now why this is such a mobile creature. It's got insane speed and some pretty cool acrobatic skills with some heavy damage on top of it as well. They are great dog fighters. They really are top of their clan when it comes to mobility, super speedy and super maneuverable. And in number 1 we've got the Mwing, and for me this had to be in the number 1 slot for the best mobility tame. It is unmatched, namely considering it also is unlocked in terms of its saddle level at level 18, and nothing is really like it at that level. And still, at any level, I find this is the best travel or mobility mount out there. It just gains so much speed, and considering how easy it is to tame, I know I'm going back on it again, but it is just so easy to tame. A couple of signposts, some trank arrows, then unlock that saddle at level 18. Boom. I know trank arrows are unlocked at level 21, but still, you know, very, very early on. You probably want to get this thing in your mid-20s in terms of level, not in terms of age, of course. Accessible for all ages, I should mention. And then you've got yourself a really speedy, great glider out there, and it's just unmatched when it comes to performance. You really, even if the terrain is flat, you can just get a lot of agility with this thing, and maybe a little bit difficult to control when you start using them. Again, practice on those missions on Gen 2 if you don't before you get one, or even once you've got one. Just keep practicing. It's a really easy controlled environment and you've got no other enemies and stuff in your way. They also are a portable feeding trough. They can gather berries and also glide on top of water, and they're pretty good swimmers too, but they really are the king of mobility. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all have enjoyed, as I've definitely enjoyed making this one. As always, comment down below what is the best mobility tame to you, and if you didn't agree with this, put your 10 in the comments below, and I'll see you all later.